Hello and welcome to this conversation about leadership, tech, innovation and accelerating growth. I'm Jamie, I'm the Executive Chairman of C Learning, a leading digital transformation specialist, and I get to work with change makers who are doing extraordinary things that position them in the vanguard of progressive practice with technology and leadership. And we're joined by a very, very special guest today that I'll introduce in a minute. But Chris, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, I'm the Product Solution Manager for C Learning. So anything that makes life a little bit easier for our client base, I'm all on board for that. So it's great to be involved in the conversation today and getting some insights from Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I'd like to introduce my special guest today now, which is Richard Wood, the Chief Executive of Rocketeer Group, a serial entrepreneur, diverse background. I'll let him introduce himself properly in a moment, but a long-standing friend of mine as well. And I'm absolutely thrilled that he can join us today to share some of his insights around some of the topics we're going to be discussing. But Richard, you just want to augment the introduction I gave you there in any way that suits you?
Well, no, thank you. And it's great to be here this afternoon chatting with you two about business and tech and innovation. And I can't wait to jump into it. CEO of Rocketeer. We kind of specialize in business consultancy and business growth, number of different projects we operate. But can't wait to get started on this this conversation.
Well, brilliant. We're thrilled you're here. So thanks for putting some time aside on this very sunny afternoon in Staffordshire, where we're based, of course. I know Chris is further up north. Thanks for putting some time aside to join us. And I'm really looking forward to some of the insights that we're going to be digging into. We've got a number of open-ended discussion points. So we'll see where the conversation goes. There's no set questions. There's no set rules around this conversation. It is a completely open, frank, supportive conversation. Nobody's sponsoring this, so we're not pushing any agenda or any particular platform, so that I think that gives it credibility as hopefully a really valuable conversation as well. But sincere thanks for joining us today. I'm going to kick things off, and then what we'll do is we'll sort of do a bit of a double act, me and Chris, of one question from me and one question from Chris, and we'll see how it goes, unless we get confused. Or if my internet drops out, Chris will just carry on with the questions. So first opener from me, Rich, is I know, because I've known you for a long time, you've helped to scale loads and loads of different businesses and organizations, and you've helped to accelerate their growth as well. So on that journey, what would you say were some of the defining lessons and insights that you've learned on that journey in terms of what helps people succeed at scale, if I can say that in one sentence? And what maybe stalls some of that growth for some organizations as well? So on the downside, what stalls that acceleration of growth, and what do you think the key insights are, and what accelerates it?
Wow, you've really picked a nice, easy kind of question. I mean, if we nail this one, then we can all follow the guidance, launch and scale our business, and put our feet up after we use AI to hit all of the key performance indicators. It's a really, really good question, and I think that there are probably a number of different aspects that some people from different backgrounds and businesses might say are key. And I think really what would be interesting for us to try and do here is maybe see if we could pull out what the fundamentals might be. And I think there's a couple really. I mean, one of them for me is the determination and perseverance and commitment from the business owner, because I think that it's about a journey, and it's about understanding what your business does, understanding who your business clients are, recognizing what value they actually get from what you provide for them. And for the business owner, it's making sure that that's wrapped up in something that is actually profitable. And I know that those few things sound like really, really common sense, and you think, well, everyone can do that. But only yesterday, well, maybe was it yesterday, a couple of days ago, I was working with one of my clients, and we looked at their different types of clients that they actually service, and we split them into categories, and we looked at the lifetime gross profit value, because that's something people often miss. We looked at the gross profit value over the average lifetime of their clients. One client cost them £1,583 over the average lifetime that they stayed with them. And one client generated them £127,800 in gross profit. The actual average lifespan for this company, by the way, was 11 years, because they're an energy business. So they do tend to have contracts for quite a while, and they do stick for a while. But on average, 11 years, some more, some less. And yet they couldn't quite see that. And the reason why they couldn't quite see it is because this great phrase I've heard, which is your nose is only an inch away from your mouth, but you can't smell your own bad breath. And that's one of the challenges you face in business, is that you can be so in it and you just want to grow. And so sometimes you just think revenue, income, new client, closer to goal, where actually it could be revenue, income, client, filling up my capacity with an unprofitable business, which is now moving me further away from my goal. So it's just these little nuances around perseverance, having the right business model. And then I'd say probably the third one is timing. And it's underrated, that one, but I suppose you two could probably think of a few classic examples of where if only the business had got the timing right. And for me, AI is a big one, because I've had quite a few complicated ideas that need quite a lot of headspace and tech and designers to be able to bring it all together. And I've never quite managed to find the solutions to some of it. Whereas at the moment, AI with these AI agents and this super brains and this generative AI and these LLMs, all these different phrases that are being fired at us. But once you get under the bonnet of it and you have a look at it, I think the time is really coming to fruition for our company in particular. So I'd probably go for those three.
And what a three to go for. I mean, that was a really difficult way I opened this conversation in some ways, because those are like $1 million questions I just posed there. But I think you did an awesome job of revealing some key points there, Richard, actually. And I should say for anybody watching this as well that I won't go into details because there's a lot of proprietary tech that Richard's been developing. But if anybody has an interest in how AI can accelerate your organization, Richard does have a very, very interesting platform that's proving to have some absolutely stellar results, the likes of which I haven't actually seen anywhere else. And I go all over the world looking at these things, and Richard's onto something very, very interesting. So after this, I would strongly recommend reaching out to Richard to dig into some of those points that Richard was just touching upon. I'm going to let Chris ask the next question. Can you ask an equally difficult question, Chris, or are you going to be kind?
Try and make Richard squirm. No, he's absolutely fine. Yeah, great answer to the first question there. Just from like a business consultancy perspective, Richard, then sort of high performance growth. What exactly does that mean? Would that be value that you add? Is it staff engagement? Is it commitment? What sort of are the key sort of things for you there when you're talking about moving somebody forward and getting that high performance growth within their business?
Yeah, another really good question. And I think trying to give an answer that can maybe be of interest to all of the listeners, especially those that are running businesses themselves, I think it can come down to what type of organization you are. Because if you are quite a big organization with big teams, then the vision, the mission, the culture becomes so important, because you want everyone to be buying into what you actually deliver and provide for your clients and how you do that as a company. Whereas I think if you're a 2 or a 3 person organization, you can be a lot more nimble. You don't need to be thinking maybe quite so deep about visions, missions, and culture, and you can just totally focus on what you're actually trying to achieve. But whichever of those perspectives you're coming from, I would say the key driver is knowing where you're going. I think that we're talking about outstanding performance, and only this morning I was using Notebook LLM, which I'm sure you two know of. And I actually used the FA created something called the 4-corner model, where they actually analyzed why some professional footballers go on to be highly successful and, of course, then highly valuable, and why so many don't. And the 4-corner model picked out 4 aspects. There was team skills, there was physical capability, then there was team skills, your physicality, then the other one was your skills. And then the last one was the psychology of how you approach everything. And all 4 of them have a different percentage in weighting. And the talk that I gave looked at Cristiano Ronaldo when he joined Manchester United in 2003, ranked about 100 in the world, value £10 million transfer. Not many years later, maybe 5 or 6 years later, next transfer, 80 million quid. And what the analysis came down to was, in those early days, Ronaldo felt like he was already the best player in the world when he wasn't. He trained like he was the best player in the world when he wasn't. And over time, the actions and the results demonstrated that he was actually the best, one of the best players in the world. And I think that in football, it's easier. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. And in sport, I think it's easier in one way, because in sport, you know the rules. You know what you're doing. In football, we've got to get more goals than them, and we can't break the rules, you know, and we know what the rules are. You know, if you think of Formula One, we know the rules, who can go around the quickest. Golf, who can get the ball in the hole with least amount of shots. But sometimes I'll say to a business client, I'll say, so what's the goal in business? And it can be different for everyone. And so for me, I think fundamentally outstanding performance comes down to knowing what your target is. And usually it comes down to growth and success. And growth and success is usually determined by, back to what I said earlier, having a profitable business model. Because actually, if you can provide valuable inside a profitable business model, then you're going to be able to grow. And it sounds simple, but sometimes it can be missed. So yeah, having that future goal, knowing the rules that you're playing by, and then everyone aligning to that, whether you're a big organization or a small one, probably that's a good conversation to explore for outstanding performance.
100%, and that's one of the very few conversations involving football that engaged me and that I understood.
I was concerned there, Richard, Ray started talking about football. I thought Jamie's going to get that puzzled look on his face in a minute.
I'm one of the few people that was invited. I was invited to a VIP box at a football match, and after the half-time thing, I was cheering for the wrong side because I didn't realize they'd switched halves or something. I don't know. It's all mystical to me, sport, Richard. But that was really, really useful. The next question from me is one that I think we're going to probably come back to throughout this conversation because it's an AI related question. So if we don't keep going back to this at various points of the conversation, I'll be very surprised, because I think it's actually the law that we have to mention AI a certain number of times in any meeting we have anywhere in the world at the moment. Okay. So my AI related question to kick us off with this one is, AI is obviously transforming and disrupting pretty much most things wherever I go at the moment, business models and everything, even the way we work, the way we're creating things and everything. What changes are you seeing in the context of AI in terms of how startups are built and are scaling? Because it's my gut feeling is it's profound, and are we moving towards a new kind of founder and a new kind of business model, I wonder, or business models? What are your thoughts around this, Richard? Because I know you're doing a lot of very exciting work in that specific space.
Yeah, I am, and it's an interesting question. However, I would say that a lot of our focus now is around supporting growth with existing companies. So I'm probably more in that space around. Our company's been going a year or two. We're at 200-300K turnover. We're trying to grow. We're struggling. We're not sure what's happening. We want to become this £4 or £5 million operation. What do we do? That's kind of the space where I'm in at the moment. And so my AI conversations are a lot around, well, how big's your organization? Like I alluded to earlier. How many people have you got in the team? What does your business actually do? What do you deliver, etc., etc.? But coming back to your question, I think that everything is fundamentally shifting. I saw something earlier around how someone used some AI tools to generate £70,000 over a weekend. Now, I mean, we've always had enterprising people, haven't we?
Can you share the link, Richard?
Yeah, I need to go back and read it again. Yeah. But I think enterprising people are enterprising. It's the tools they use to leverage that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that's probably one of the keys with AI is it's just such a huge lever that if you just need to use it, play with it. And I think people who are thinking of starting businesses today and already maybe understand AI, they're using it, they get how it can benefit them and support them, they're going to be at a huge advantage for existing businesses against existing businesses, because the existing businesses have got the incumbent costs of maybe they've got building costs, maybe they've got team costs. Whereas a new person with a new startup idea now, I mean, there's talk around getting to a billionaire that's a one person, I don't want to say one man band, because women, I think they create probably better businesses than men. So yeah, I think that that kind of one person billionaire, there's bets on the table now how quickly that's going to happen. And so I think it is totally fundamentally changing everything. the way that we're reaching out to customers for outbound marketing, the way that we're dealing with inbound inquiries now. We can use AI, we can use voice, we can automate. And so this whole way that we've been running businesses over the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you may as well chuck that rule book out the window, because it is fundamentally changing. When you can go to Gemini or ChatGPT and say, here's a business I really like, here's the website, I want you to go scrape it, I want you to tell me what it does, I want you to tell me what the value proposition is, what lead magnet are they selling to their customers, who's their ideal customer they're targeting, and can you give me any indication of what they might be charging for that, where their gross profit margin is, because what I want to do is replicate it, and then tell me where they're having the most success on their marketing channels. And then maybe we could see how we could use some of these AI tools to not only use AI in marketing, but maybe we could then start to use it in follow-up with sales, so that I can start to get some of these filtered leads of people that are interested in what I can offer them, and we can get and be those conversations going quickly. So it's just a huge game changer on every level, that every day I get up and I go and look at my AI update information, and everything's changing. So again, I think one of the challenges I'm trying to get my head around is how do I understand the value it's giving me in my current business? And it's back to that previous comment we had where we were talking about outstanding performance. You need to know where you're going, you need to know who your clients are, you need to know what value you're giving them, and you need to know how it's wrapped up in your finances. And now what you need to do is see how AI can help that. And I think if you come at it from that way, then you can bring it into what your business is doing.
100%. And in the recording of this, for anyone watching, Rich has just given you the ultimate competitive advantage with a word perfect prompt you can type into ChatGPT to nail the competition there as well. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Chris, I'll let you ask the next question.
Yeah, sure. A lot of talk around AI, obviously, at the moment, and that's evolving at an incredible pace. Trends or technologies, Richard, at the moment for you? What are you most excited about? Any drawbacks, concerns that you may have? It doesn't necessarily have to be AI, but if it is, you know, again, concerns, as it's a fairly new platform in terms of, you know, the conditions that it's in at the moment. It's certainly developed from something that people may kind of play around with a little bit to a tool that is absolutely and utterly paramount to a lot of success within the business world at the moment.
Yeah, great questions again, and really, really interesting. I think for me, one of the things that I'm trying to work on is I've had the privilege of being supported by the Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire Business Growth Hub, and I've been funded to work with some businesses and to look at how AI could maybe support the business. And it's back to that coming in and really trying to understand what the constraint to growth is. Because if we can start with where are we trying to get to again, what's stopping us getting there, and then how might AI help? I think it's really important to have that right approach. But on that then, what I'm doing when I'm talking to people and the feedback I'm getting is we're looking at the current workflows in the business. So anyone who's listening, if they think about the way their business works traditionally, you've got marketing activity, you get some interest, you get sales activity, you get some interest, sign-ups there, they become clients. Then it's about onboarding, it's about delivering that great product and that great service. And I think that they are very traditional ways of looking at separate parts to a business. And let's say we call those siloed operations where they're all operating independently. I think the shift now means that we can still look at that, but now we can start to connect that journey using AI. And I haven't developed this myself because it's just phrases and words, but I'm using terminology to myself around these new AI op workflows. That's what we're kind of looking at now. And so for me, we're going to get new tools and new systems, and all of these software providers, these AI companies, they're going to be coming up with new functionality, new evolution, new development, just because for those of you that are listening, and for you too, I know you're going to know about Moore's Law. Well, that principle applies to AI, but it's not just a 24-month increase in capability and halving in cost. It's apparently a 7-month. So if you rely on any particular tool, you're going to have a challenge because they're all evolving so quickly. It's like, how do I keep track of, which is the right tool to use? So what I'd recommend is think about the key data that you would have traditionally collected in those different areas. Once you collect that data, now you can start to use that data and almost inject it through the AI tools that you're choosing to use, because all they are is a vehicle. What you're doing is inputting your data, asking it something, and you're getting an output. Well, you can do that with all of the AI tools. So it's about capturing the right data for me, working out this workflow, and then it's just what tool does that for me at the moment. Because as long as you've got hold of your proprietary data, you can actually jump in and out of different tools and see what different effects you're getting. But the key is owning your data, understanding what you're trying to do with it, which should always come back to improvement in marketing, improvement in sales, and improvement in operational delivery around the right business model where we're making the most profits and we're working with the most profitable clients, which obviously I'm kind of coming back to that, because for me, you don't want to be going down different rabbit holes of, oh, look at this new opportunity, look at this new generative AI tool. We can now create this video, and they're all great and they're all interesting, but they're also all potential distractions that can move you away from what you're trying to do with these trends and with these technologies.
Yeah, 100%. Great insights there again, Richard. Thanks for sharing those. I'm going to move us into a slightly different field now, because I'm going to move us into it being all about people rather than technology and platforms. And this is a space where I've seen how effective you are and the brilliant work that you do. And I've had the privilege to see you running workshops and things where you are coaching, if I can put it that way, business leaders, as much around mindsets as anything technical or to do with business specifics. And you bring such energy and insights to that. It's inspirational to watch. And so on that topic, that's kind of what I wanted to dig into a little bit, really, is that with your extensive experience of working with lots of different business leaders of all different types, and a lot of startups that are scaling up around the level that you were describing earlier, what kind of a mindset do you think is helpful for leaders to have in this complex, rapidly changing world that we're in? And is there any tips or tools or techniques you would share that help leaders to unlock that kind of mindset? Because I've met an awful lot of business startups, as I'm sure you have, and leaders as well in all different types of sectors, that sometimes they're held back by a certain mindset, maybe. What are your thoughts and reflections on that? What have you picked up on in terms of what's a winning mindset that might help people to really power their growth?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So I'm going to jump in with a little story, because everybody likes a story, don't they? And we're going to talk about the monkey mindset, Jamie, the monkey mindset. So I want you to imagine this, right? Remember the last time you had a banana? Yeah, do you like bananas, you two? Yeah,
I do indeed.
So
yeah.
I don't know if you ever found this, but opening a banana, sometimes when you peel it back, it can be a little bit difficult at the top, and the skin bit can sometimes squash down, or you get little threads that come out. And I came across this very interesting article that said I've been peeling a banana wrong all my life, which kind of caught my attention. And in fact, I nearly finished and published a book a few years ago that you very kindly did an introduction to, Jamie. But I'm glad I didn't publish it, because there was no AI in it and it had been out of date already. But I was going to call it How to Peel a Banana. And actually, that's the title of the series of podcasts that we run inside our new platform for people that are inside the platform. And I'll give you the one story, which is the monkey mindset. So what scientists realized is when they watched monkeys, they flip the banana around and they use the little tiny nub end, and they just pull it down dead easy. And just think about it like that. If you don't even know how to peel a banana properly, what else don't you know? All right. And so for me, that kind of mindset, the monkey mindset of being open-minded, that old, very, very familiar phrase around, if you use your mind like a parachute, that's when it works best, which is when it's open. That's a bit of a more common theme. But for me, you need the monkey mindset. You need to have an open mind, and then anyone listening to this, if they've got a closed mind and it's very much, I know everything, I don't need to listen to these three guys chat on about business, well, then they're not going to pick anything up. But if someone was listening to this and they're already very experienced at business, which actually probably means they've already got an open mindset, they might have just picked up one thing that we've talked about and gone, do you know what? That links to actually something that I've been thinking about is really pertinent and relevant to me. So I think the monkey mindset, number one. And then the next one I'd say is that I'd say hope. And I've got another great story about hope. And this story is about the drowning rat. I like my stories. So I think we need to have hope in where we're going. And I think if we're intelligent enough and we've got the right approach, so in other words, we've got an open mind and we're using some intelligence to see if we're getting close to our goal, go back to our rules again. We need to know what we're aiming for: business growth and success, lots of gross profit, lots of money. That's what we're kind of aiming for. Is it okay to say we want loads of money in business? Well, yes, because the idea is that you're giving value to your clients. And if you're concentrating on giving them value and you've priced it right, they're happy to pay you, and then everyone wins. I think sometimes we forget to embrace that it's okay to want to be rich and earn money in business. But back to the hope. So this study in the 1950s by some Harvard scientists, they took a rat and they decided to drop it into a tube of water, and they timed how long it took before it started to drown. I know, American students doing these scientific tests, okay? Doesn't sound great, but let's see what happens. So what they then did is, as it started to drown, they picked it up, rescued it. I had this visions of them getting two little fingers on the chest and all these little bits of water flying out, but they didn't let it die. So, you know, that's obviously the good side to this, is that the rat didn't die, but they timed it. And on average, every 15 minutes, on average, they're going under. So they took them out, revived them, gave them a second or two, and put them back in again. So, Chris, first, quick instant guess. I know you're not going to get it. You know, if you get it right, amazing. How long do you think it took on the second time? And obviously, there's a clue in what we're talking about here, which is hope. But how long do you think the kind of rat went on the second swim?
I'm hoping that it probably went a little bit longer than the first one. I'm gonna double it then. I'm gonna go mad and double the actual time on this. Jamie's got his "are we talking about football" face on here.
Even though it was close to that after 15 minutes, I'm
gonna double it just because I'm not sure, and we can always edit this part out, Jamie, can't we?
We would if we had any editing skills.
Oh, don't worry, we can use AI.
We'll use AI to edit it. Yeah.
Jamie, what's your answer?
Well, you see, I wouldn't have doubled it. I would have gone less, because I think that's quite a long time for to be swimming, to be perfectly honest. Although maybe I just don't know enough about rat swimming capabilities. But I would have said more. But I'd have said 20, 22 minutes, 23.
Okay. So maybe the key is not about knowing rats, it's understanding the psychology, I hope, because the answer's 60 hours.
Good grief. Seriously?
60 hours. And so they were trying to work out why. And what they actually found out was because, well, why do you think? Why would they go from 15 minutes, I've had enough, I don't want to be here any longer?
Well, that reminds me of that old leadership quote that somebody said, and I forget who said it now, but they said, "I've learned that I can go on long after I can't."
Right.
And it's obviously something in that psychology, which rats obviously do extremely well. And I think the lesson here for our team at C Learning, Chris, is I think I need to nearly drown all of you.
I'll never say I'm tired again. Never say
and then I just need to save you all in the last minute, and then
then they'll be like, "Oh my God,
I dread we're on a slippery slope here, gentlemen. We're going to end up,
Well, I don't look forward to your next company Christmas party. I can imagine you all with armbands and swimming at the local leisure centre. But no, what they worked out was the fact that the rat was rescued once and it didn't expect to be rescued. So then it was just waiting to be rescued again, and it just kept going and it kept going. And I think that's the thing, is like, if you keep going, but you don't change what you're doing, then I think that's linking somewhere into this phrase of stupidity, where, you know, if you expect a different outcome, but you keep on doing the same things. Whereas what we're talking about here is intelligent action aligned to clear future targets that we've touched on quite a bit today, using leverage where you can with AI. Then why not hope? Why not believe in anything's possible? Because why shouldn't it be? And so for me, it's that open mind of the monkey mindset, and then it's that hope of what's possible. And we only have to look at, you know, for anyone that's running a business today or thinking of it, think of a business that's in your category or in your area. And is there an example of some business that's succeeding at a very high level? In other words, they're generating big revenue, they've got great clients, they're making lots of profits. Well, yes. So it's possible. So there's that example for us of being rescued in the story of the rat. So I don't know if that's
I love
answered
that.
the question.
So do you know, I'm just buzzing from this conversation already. And when this conversation's over, by the way, the first thing that me and Chris are going to go and do is go into the kitchen and just get a banana. Just to test this theory and go.
Well, you could drop the banana, the banana in the water and see how long before it raises its little peel up and says, "Please rescue me."
I absolutely love that story about hope as well, and how you've relayed that as well. There's something very, very powerful in that, isn't there? Mindset again. I mean, what a powerful illustration of mindset as well. I absolutely love that. Yeah, Chris, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, fantastic, excellent stories there, Richard. I did know the banana one, I must admit.
Oh, did you?
Isn't it strange though how everybody opens a banana that way, so I'll open a banana that way rather than sort of free thinking.
You know what I do? See, I don't want to distract us too much on bananas, but I've got a slightly different technique with bananas as well, because I get annoyed by the fact that I always do what everybody does, which is open it the wrong way, according to Richard's story. Yes. So I'll struggle, and then it sort of breaks off a bit inconveniently. You squash the first bit of the banana, which is always disappointing. So what I've done to overcome that is I sometimes squeeze the banana a bit, and then sometimes it'll split, and then you can prise it open and sort of do it that way. So I've got a really weird banana technique.
Well, you could say ingenuity. You could say ingenuity there, though, because you've looked at the problem and you've worked out your own solution to it. So that's not too bad at all. Right, one of the great things, Richard, that I discovered when I joined C Learning is the culture. Jamie, extremely approachable. He doesn't consider himself to be at the top of the tree. In fact, you often say, Jamie, that our setup is the other way around, with you being at the bottom and everybody else being on top there, as a strong foundation. So from a culture perspective then, Richard, what are your insights? What's your value on building and protecting a strong culture, say for a startup, and then as that develops maybe into a larger scaled up business with more people down the line?
I'd say out of all the questions you've been asking me, this is probably the hardest one for me to answer, because as I alluded to earlier, I do tend to focus with smaller organizations, and I'm not saying that the culture is not important, because the way we all approach, the way we live our lives independently, when we bring that into a company, that becomes the culture. So if you don't formally talk about what that's going to be, it can informally become the kind of sum of its parts. So I don't really get into culture a lot, but I suppose from my perspective, just chatting about it and thinking about that question you've asked, it comes down to finding, for me, if you're going to be taking people on and recruiting and growing your business with more team members, when they're coming into the team, their attitude and their approach to work obviously is really important. And I think that a lot of that comes from seeing what the rest of the team do. So I like to lead by example. And what I mean by that is not necessarily being the first one in and the last one out, more around the professionalism of outstanding performance that we talked about before in all of the aspects that I'm doing. So if I'm on a marketing activity, I want to do that to the best of my ability. If I'm doing sales, I want to do that to the best of my ability. If it needs a little bit of research, and then maybe I'm talking to people, asking them, applying it, learning it, because I truly feel that the best business owners are the ones that understand all of the elements of the business from trial and error. And then as the business grows, they're able to share what works and what succeeds with the team. And then you're talking from experience, which I think people respect that. So I think that it comes down to work ethics. It comes down to wanting to be the best you can be. And I'm not a change management person. I'm not skilled in how you might help organizations adopt that if it's not already there. But for me, it's those kind of little things around outstanding performance, work ethic, wanting to really deliver a good service. And I suppose the final thing on that for me is that one of the things I try to do, and I talk to our team about, is when we do take people on, we're always looking to take people on who are better than us. So by us knowing what that role is and what we want it to achieve for the business to grow, we want to bring someone in who knows more than we know, because otherwise what's the point? Because if we've got to bring people in and train them up, maybe we haven't got time to do that. And again, the caveat of all this is every organization is at a different size, different stage. So this won't apply to everyone. I can only really talk from my experience. But yeah, for me, it's bringing in people that know more than you so that it increases. It's almost kind of like every time someone comes in, you want the water level and the capability and the quality to rise. And one of the problems with that is you have to open yourself up to not being the most intelligent or the most capable or the most knowledgeable person in that room. And for some people, that's about maturity, because that can be quite hard. I think I've got a lot better at life in general as I've got older and learned. And some of these things, some people are just naturally intelligent, polite, professional. I've just over time got better at some of these things, and then applied it in my business work, really.
I love that. I do love that. I like just building on your point you're making there, Richard. I like that old quote about if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so I echo your points there. I try and do that with everything that I get involved with, and I do think some of the insights you're sharing there about culture is like really important as well. We think about it a lot in our business at Sea Learning, and we've got a very unusual culture in Sea Learning. I think it's fair to say, and I'm not saying this in a boastful way or anything like that, because it's no one would say it's perfect or anything like that. We're always learning, always evolving, and always changing, but we are very unusual. I think everybody in the team would agree with me when I say we're very different to most organizations. But there are common threads across everybody in the team, which is they all provide exceptional, dedicated personal care. And that comes from an authentic interest in others. Like, for example, Chris on this call. I mean, I'll big up Chris for a second on this call. I mean, Chris is an exemplar, really, for providing dedicated personal care to clients because it's personal to him. He genuinely doesn't want to let anybody down and will go to remarkable lengths. And we keep a lot of these things to ourselves. We don't shout about it publicly or share it publicly. But I can say now that I've seen Chris do things for people where it's not just going a bit above and beyond. He's showed a thoughtfulness of getting to know people authentically, which goes way above what any normal salesperson would do in any normal organization. And for us, that's very important. That's something special that we try and nurture as best we can. And like you say, Richard, we try and bring in people that bring something special in their own way that we don't already have. So let's keep on the people theme a little bit then and dig into this in a bit more detail with the next question from me, really, which is about what misconceptions do you think a lot of people have when they're trying to grow and scale their businesses? And I'll share a little one from my perception just to get us going. And this is a personal one for me, really, is that I remember when I was much younger and I was starting to grow different little enterprises or helping organizations to grow in different ways and different roles I had. I always had this belief that, won't it be amazing when we go from turning over thousands to turning over hundreds of thousands? And then if we get to turning over millions, life will get so much easier. And my lesson there, I'm sorry to break this to anybody who hasn't gone on this journey yet and is on this journey, but I'm afraid it doesn't get any easier. In fact, all that happens is the problems get bigger and more complex.
I remember I remember a quote from Anthony Robbins, and he said, the thing with being really, really, really rich is your problems don't go away. You just arrive at them in style.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on misconceptions about those kind of themes, Richard, in terms of growing and scaling the businesses? Do you find yourself having to debunk a few misconceptions with the people you work with from time to time? Because I know you really help people accelerate their growth with organizations. And do you have to debunk a few myths and misunderstandings from time to time? And what kind of things crop up?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is you don't know what you don't know. And that's half the challenge, isn't it? It's like, it's back to that monkey mindset that we talked about before, about having an open mind. I think that for businesses that, and I say lucky, because I do think there is an element of luck. If you start a business for the first time and you just happen to provide great value and you just happen to have been able to charge them way more than you actually cost you to deliver that product or service. In other words, you've got good gross profit margins. Then I think if you continue to do that and you learn quickly and you bring in good people, then I think that business can grow and become successful. Fundamentally, because if it's a business that's got to grow organically based on its own activity and its own profits, then that's what's needed. Obviously, it's different if it's funded with VC or investment money at the beginning. It's going to be maybe a different journey. But back to that, you don't know what you don't know. I think that if you started your business and you didn't quite get that bit right because you didn't realize how important gross profit is for growth, you could be thinking, well, we're signing up all these clients and they're paying us, but yet we're not growing. So I'm confused. And this is what I get a lot, is where people are saying, I'm full, I'm at capacity, and I don't understand why we're not growing. And more importantly, I don't understand why we haven't got much money in the bank at the end of the month. And it's some of these basic fundamentals that you don't know, you just don't know it until, someone helps you. So for me, the answer is recognizing the importance of finding someone to help you on that journey. But it needs to be someone who can help you on the journey of knowing the goal where you're trying to get to and can help you get there. Because otherwise, a great one I talk about is people go to networking events, and they can be great, but they can also be a massive distraction. Now, as a consultant, I never guess. The only way I can advise anyone is by asking questions. So I say, well, where do you get most of your clients from? And if most of their clients come from referrals and networking events, go and do loads of networking events and get referrals. If none of your clients or 5% of your clients are coming from referrals and networking, why the hell are you going to networking events and looking for referrals? Actually, if you're getting 90% of your business via LinkedIn or through TikTok or whatever it might be. So I think that's the key, really. And something else I've recently found out, which is fascinating again, is that there was this Chinese study. I think it's called the Chinese rule, and someone realized that when you get to around 300,000 to 400,000 turnover, and then it then becomes a pattern of every 10 times that amount, you get problems inside the business that weren't there before. So if you start off at 100K and you've got a few clients, and then you get up to 300-400, all of a sudden something's not working, something's broken. And you don't know why, because you've just been repeating what you've been doing. So if you come across someone that knows, well, actually, when you get to a certain size, things start to break down. You've got capacity issues because now your cost base is spread across a wider number of clients, and maybe you've opened another venue, and all these different aspects can come into growth. And so for me, it's really trying to help yourself and find an expert that can help you understand what the main constraint to growth is. Because usually we think it's one thing, but it's actually not. A great example is the gym industry. A lot of people, if you said to them, well, what's the gym industry all about to be successful? They'd say it's about running successful gym sessions. But actually, it's not about running successful gym sessions. The biggest problem that gym ownership and gym owners and centers have is the fact that people drop off. And there's constantly people leaving because they're not using their memberships, because they're not getting value. So when the value drops lower than the price point, that's when people cancel. So actually, successful and highly profitable and impactful gym memberships are around where can we provide great value, great service, charge well for it, and make great gross profit. But it's all about how do we actually acquire new clients. So it's actually a marketing operation. And so, for me, I've got lots of mentors that have helped me. Jamie, you've helped me over the years. Some are online mentors. I mentioned Anthony Robbins. I've listened to some of his work. Alex Hormozy is a great YouTuber, business coach, phenomenal. And we've talked about people, and we've touched on thoughts and psychology a little bit. And there's a great guy that I learned a lot of my emotional intelligence from called Sydney Banks, who's unfortunately is no longer with us. But Sydney Banks is a very interesting character on how you can kind of emotionally grow to be able to take your business on that journey. So I don't know if that's answered your question. I've probably gone down a little rabbit hole.
I think that's more than answered it. In fact, again, you've raised. We could almost do a separate session on some of the themes I think you've touched upon, Richard. I mean, you just mentioned there about mentors and coaches that you have, and I echo that because I've had mentors and coaches throughout my whole career, and they've just been priceless in terms of the value. We've all had days in any leadership role. There's always a day when you get, you just need to phone a friend, and picking up that phone and saying, "How did you deal with this? Because this is what's going wrong," and all of that. but you've got to have those networks and connections, haven't you? Because without that, it can be it's a lonely enough road as it is anyway, with all of the challenges that come in any leadership role or any business owner or leader in any organization. It's a challenging role anyway. But in my journey, and then you can probably relate to this, Richard, the people I've seen who've maybe struggled the most are what I would describe as isolated. They've sort of locked themselves away in an organization and tried to solve whatever challenges they've got with their existing little bubble, and they're actually quite isolated, whereas the smartest thing they could have done would be to bring a different perspective from completely outside and go, what do you make of this? And it brings completely new and different perspectives. It's a bit like when someone new joins C Learning, they bring completely different perspectives, because we're all habitual to a certain extent. And just on the subject of when we're talking a little bit earlier on in the conversation about mindsets and maybe any things that are blockers or things people have to overcome or misconceptions. Just sharing another little one from my journey is that a misconception or mindset gap I had is that when you do things like MBAs and all these qualifications and stuff that I've done, they teach you about all the stuff, strategy, marketing, finance, operations, all this stuff you learn. But during my whole academic journey, no one ever taught me about the thing that nearly snookered me the fastest. I'd learned all about how to turn around organizations and strategy and how to accelerate different things. But no one ever taught me how to deal with running out of working capital because you're growing too fast. and that is the fastest way you can actually go bust. It's not shrinking and declining over time. It's actually being too successful, signing too many deals, and then your finance director saying, you do know you need £1 million in cash by Friday, right?
Wow,
and that is a lesson in business that I learned the hard way. I mean, we overcame it, but it's like an area that no one sort of teaches you about that sort of stuff on any course I've ever done. But from a growth point of view, from a leadership point of view, those are the things that really can bite you if you haven't learned the hard way, I suppose, with it. But that was just one from my journey to share anyway. But Chris, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, let's take it down a notch with failure. Okay.
We'll bring it back up at the end. We promise.
Not necessarily in a negative way. Just obviously on any of these journeys, Richard, I'm sure you'll see this from startup to established companies. You're going to get hiccups along the way, aren't you? You're going to get things that don't work. You're going to get things that maybe aren't ideal for your business. When you get something that is potentially a failure or something that's not gone quite right, how can you then try and turn that round into something that's maybe a learning process or something that leads to growth or, resilience against what's happened previously? Is there like a rule of thumb for you on that?
Yeah, another good question. You're pulling all the top drawer questions out, aren't you, that really get to the core of business, which is great. I think that for me, there's no such thing as failure. For me, everything is a bit like a science experiment. It's like we do this and then this happens. And I think if you see it as success or failure, you're kind of probably losing all the juicy information that's wrapped up inside it. Because often when things don't go right, that's when you get the biggest breakthroughs, I think it was the Post-it sticky note where they were trying to make something that would stick forever and it kept failing and they couldn't make it work and it would only stick for a tiny little bit of time and then it'd peel off and someone went, oh my God, this is phenomenal. And so I think it's I'd say it's the pursuit of wanting to understand something. And I think not accepting that if something is great or something is bad, I think that's kind of key. I've got another great little story for you. You can tell I'm the story person today, can't you? The story man. Story time with Rocketeer Rich. So this story is a good one. So there was this farmer, an old farmer in a village, and he was basically outside in his field, and he got a horse in the field. He got a couple of horses running around in his field. And basically what happened is one of the horses dropped down dead, wasn't very well, really poorly. And this young guy was walking through the village in the morning, and he said to the farmer, he said, "Oh my God, you must be really, really, really down and upset because you've lost one of your horses. One of your horses has died. You must feel really bad about it." And the farmer said, "Que sera, sera, what will be, will be." And he goes through his day, buries the horse, goes to bed, wakes up the next day. And there's two extra horses have arrived into his field, wild horses that were roaming around. They've come up to this lone horse on its own. And now there's three horses. And this young man on his morning trip through the village sees the farmer and says, "Mr. Farmer, you must be absolutely over the moon today because now you've got three horses." And he went, "Well, hey, Sarah, Sarah, we'll see what tomorrow brings." Um, and then the next day he's coming through and the young man says, "How's things today?" And the farmer says, "Well, I've got not great today. My son tried to actually tame one of the wild horses yesterday. And when he jumped onto the back of it, it threw him up in the air and he fell off and he broke his leg." And the young man's gone, "Oh my God, you must be so down today, so depressed. How are you going to manage the farm? And it's your young son that does all the hard work around here." And the farmer says, "Well, que sera, sera, let's see what tomorrow brings." And then the next morning, when the young man comes through the village, it's been announced and it's traveled through all of the villages across all of the country that the country's now just gone to war and all young, able men need to actually go and fight this other country. And obviously, the farmer's young son can't go. He's protected because he's broken his leg. And it's this, and life, that's good for the farmer. It's good for the young man who broke his leg because his life's, he's not going to get killed on the front line. And I think that's the point of the story, is that we get these ups and downs, these roller coasters all the time in life, and life isn't one smooth journey. I think you're very, very lucky if it is. There's always things going on, and it's back to this hope, this mindset, the monkey mindset. It's recognizing that if you don't go feel too up or feel too down and just take it in your stride, and then Sydney Banks then comes to mind for me, which is back to, what's the purpose of life? And then it started to be thinking about, why are we on this planet? What am I here for? What's my purpose? And it starts to give you that little bit of serenity around, maybe I've just got that £50,000 contract. It's good, but maybe, I need to just focus on how am I going to deliver it and not get too carried away. And then the next day, maybe you get an email saying, "I do apologize. We just sent the email to the wrong company. You didn't get the £50,000 contract. We actually meant to send it to someone else." And then are you going to let that then take you down the path of despair? So it's kind of almost releasing what's going on outside your control and accepting what you can control. And that's down to thinking about who we are as individuals, what we accept in life, and back to those morals we maybe talked about before around being the best you can be, helping people, striving to provide a great service, and doing it with a profitable business model. We have to keep bringing it back to business.
Yeah, don't you know? I think that was just an absolutely brilliant bit of business philosophy there as well that you were sharing, Rich. Just a wonderful outlook, a wonderful set of sort of perspectives there, which I just echo completely. The positivity you bring to what you do as well is quite infectious, I think, on everyone around you as well, which I'm sure is coming through this conversation to anybody listening to it as well. But I absolutely love that. And
well, I think it's because I'm just partly lucky, but partly I've worked at it and I've found my passion. And I just want to help people. But what I've done is I've wrapped up that really wanting to help people inside a profitable business model where I find the clients that can afford my service, and I know I give them great service. I mean, one client I was with the other day, £290,000 turnover. We looked at their client base and we realized that we could probably get them to closer to £1 million in the next 8 to 12 months just by pivoting towards some of their more obvious successes within the business. And it just feels so good to me to be able to help people like that. So I think that if you're doing something that you're passionate about and you enjoy, then I think that's, I remember this one phrase, sorry, Jamie, just quick, it goes, interest, find something that you're interested in. Interest leads to passion, and then passion leads to purpose. So it's quite a nice little pathway to to think about.
100%. We're sort of heading into some pretty interesting philosophical stuff here as well. But I absolutely love that. And I was listening to you then, Richard, and I was thinking, I've worked with a number of leaders over the years where we've talked about things like this and about loving what you do and having a passion for what you're doing. And I think sometimes maybe people don't realize that if they combine purpose with what they're passionate about, then happiness is a byproduct. And sometimes people start with happiness, like I want to be happy. And that's perfectly fine and a noble endeavor, of course. I would love everybody to be happy. But I think maybe not enough people realize that the route to happiness isn't that happiness is the thing to aim at. It's actually think about purpose and passion. And if you can combine the two things, happiness is a byproduct. And
yeah, because they're inside us, you see, and that's something we can control. And I think that one of I've worked with lots of young people in prison, young men in prison, and talked about passion and purpose and finding something that they can identify with. And one of the things I like to remind people is we sometimes forget the gifts and the talents that we've got because we're so busy looking for something that we think is out there that's going to give us what we're after. Whereas actually, if you think about the time when you want something and you go and work at it to get it, it's that journey and it's that daily grind of consistently being active and on it is the enjoyable bit. Sometimes you get something and then when you get it, it's like, okay, that wasn't that great anyway. So I think it's around understanding the skills and the strengths that we've got and recognizing that we don't need to go and do courses here and courses there and find lots and lots of different experts everywhere. First of all, we just need to tune into who we are, what we want. And then I think that's kind of really helpful is we have got it inside us.
I think that's an awesome way of looking at things. And this might be why we get on so well, because I think your business and the C Learning business has a certain common thread in what we've just been discussing. And that common thread is an authentic interest in people and a desire to help others. And that might be why we've all had different journeys through things like education and other sectors where it's very much focused about helping other people. And like, for example, Chris helps thousands of customers all the time with things that he can help with. And it's a common thread in our organizations. And one of my favorite quotes on that topic was shared with me by one of my late mentors, which segues into my next question, actually. But one quote I'll never forget, that it wasn't him, but it was said by somebody else, but I first heard it from him, and that was from my late friend David Price, OBE. And when he lost his mentor, which was Sir Ken Robinson, who is well known to a lot of people, when Sir Ken's funeral happened, David said to me that what we do for ourselves dies with us, but what we do for others lives on. And I think that's the way I look at business. I've often said to my team internally that I want, 10, 20 years from now, maybe I won't even be here, but I want people to look back at C Learning and the team and the experiences we had with almost a sentimentality, that it was something special and really cool. And that comes from lots of things, which we won't go into now, but I want people to be sentimental about any organization I'm part of, not just have a job. And I think that's where the purpose and passion bit comes in, but that's maybe a topic of conversation we dig into another time. I've got the privilege to ask the penultimate question because you've been really generous with your time, Richard. So I'm going to ask the penultimate question, and I'm going to leave Chris to ask the absolute big final question.
The last one's a nightmare, Richard.
It's going to be, how joking oranges then? So the penultimate question from me is about how important do you think, we've already sort of touched on some of these topics, perhaps not surprisingly by this point in the conversation, but how important do you think networks and mentors and coaches are to startups and to people who are maybe in their first leadership role or maybe trying to grow a business that they're just starting? How critical is that mentor ecosystem and coaching ecosystem, would you say, Richard?
I think it's really, really down to the individual. I think it really just comes down to the individual. I think if as an individual, you've got clarity around what you want to do with your business. I mean, you and I, Jamie, over the last 6 months or so, we've met a few different startups, entrepreneurs that are looking to get support and guidance. And some of the businesses are just absolutely phenomenal. Some of them have already been trading, they've got success. But some of them are kind of missing some key aspects. And so I think that the challenge you've got is it's finding that fine balance between knowing when to ask for help and ask questions and try and learn and have that monkey mindset, which is a phrase that's now sticking in my head. And it's knowing when it's time to just get your head down and just crack on with it. And I think that's kind of like probably something that everyone's kind of got to work out for themselves. But I suppose we need to bring it back to business all the time, because that's what we're talking about. So for me, it's got to be, is the business moving forward? It's back to that kind of science experiment idea of, what am I actually, doing in my business today? What are the team actually doing? And when we do it, what's the result? Is that moving us forward? If it is moving us forward, in other words, we're growing, we're getting success, we're getting great feedback, we've got more money coming into the bank, we've got profits, we can invest it, then obviously that pathway's working. If you are not making enough money and you are maybe at capacity, but you still can't pay yourself, or maybe you're not acquiring enough customers, or maybe you're just stuck and don't know where you're going, then absolutely you need help. And so I think it's back to that emotional intelligence, really, is maybe being able to understand when it's absolutely right to go and find someone to help you, and maybe when you just need to crack on. I mean, this is where sometimes it can be difficult for some people to ask for help as well, because sometimes I think we feel like, especially for me, being the owner of my business, sometimes I'm thought of as I've got all the answers, and I haven't got all the answers. That's why good consultants don't guess. Good consultants ask, and then when they ask, they learn, and they can align that learning with trying to help the people get to where they're trying to get to. So sometimes it can come down to, what, can you swallow your pride and go and ask for help when you need it? Because I think that's important. But the key thing really is trying to work out when I just need to crack on and when I do need to try and find some help.
Yeah, 100%. Brilliant. And Chris, I'll let you ask the final question before we wrap up this fabulous conversation. Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Final question. And we will be checking on this, Richard, in 2030 and 2035. The question is, in the next sort of 5 or 10 years' time, for a startup, if you could pick, say, a mindset or skill that you think is absolutely essential for thriving in a business world that's constantly evolving, is there any, particular thing that you would say, this is my go-to-market tip, or this is my tip for the day, shall we say?
Yeah, I think, we haven't actually talked that much about AI as I thought we were going to, but I think that I don't think you can underestimate the impact it's having in all aspects of business. The fact that we can just click buttons now and create content, we can connect different automation tasks, and we can start to run our businesses in totally different ways. And I think it's got to come down to, it's the monkey mindset, Chris. It's got to be the monkey mindset, because if you've got an open mind, you see, I knew my business has historically all been based around working in the justice sector. So we've worked a lot in prisons. We've created distance learning courses that actually still go into prisons now. We delivered business programs. We've done one-to-one support. We've worked on the wings. We've worked in female establishments, male, youth offending. And it's just been, it's been such a passion of mine and the teams to be able to help people, especially people that say, I want to learn, I want to know what I'm going to do in business. I'd like to crack on with some kind of courses and some study. And we've loved it. But what I could see coming about 18 months ago was that the funding was dropping out of the justice sector. And so I had a choice. I either kept my head down and ignored it, which is a bit like maybe you used to be a publisher and you used to maybe print papers or print magazines. And then we all went digitized. And some people said, no, I don't care. We're going to carry on. We are still going to print. And it's not that they couldn't succeed at it. It just that it just got harder and harder and harder and harder, because you could deliver the value to someone so much quicker and so much cheaper with digital that why would people use print? And so for me, it's back to that open mind. I think education, learning, an open-minded approach, but then aligning it to what's going on in your business today. It's back to that. What are we trying to do today? What's our target? What's our KPI? Where do we want to be in 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year? What does that goal look like we talked about at the beginning? What is success? How do we know when we're winning? We know when Ronaldo's winning at football. We talked about that earlier. So how do we know when we're winning at business? It's got to come down to, are we delivering value consistently? And are we growing? Are we getting referrals? And are we acquiring new clients? And are we growing and achieving success in that way? And so I think if you think like that, and then you take on board the world that we live in with an open mind and have a look at what's going on, that should give you the emotional intelligence to have kind of like your radar out going, maybe we don't carry on here. Maybe we can't keep the blinkers down. Maybe we need to adjust things. And so for me, it was understanding this new AI world. I mean, I remember, you two will remember, you're old. You guys are old like me. I remember when the world of apps started. And everyone was talking about, you can have an app for this and an app for that. And I was just totally overwhelmed. I didn't understand it. I wasn't really into it. Another very similar example, maybe a little bit before that, was when Netscape started and all of a sudden everyone could get on the internet. I think I remember there was something like a couple of thousand people in the early 1980s on the internet. And then when Netscape launched, all of a sudden everyone could get on the internet. And within a few years, you got 30,000 people online and everyone's saying, we need a website, we need a URL. And I didn't understand it. I remember listening to Chris Moyles, this is showing my age, on Radio 1, talking about people were buying up ManchesterUnited.com. And then they were selling it when Manchester United wanted to buy it. But I didn't understand it because my mindset was closed and it was like this wave, this oppression coming over me, and I just got confused with it. And I think the difference to me this time is being a little bit older, a little bit more mature again, and being open-minded. This time, when we've got the ChatGPT, the Gen AI, the LLMs, 18 months, 2 years ago, whatever now, I was already into AI anyway, but I could see this new wave coming. And so it's a mindset shift again. It's the monkey mindset. What I did is I went, you're going to like this one, guys. I went from being wiped out by the URLs and the apps to grabbing hold of my surfboard. And this time I'm going to align it so that I'm going to ride the wave. And so 18 months ago, I was already thinking about AI. I touched on the distance learning courses we do in prisons. Well, I had a conversation probably 4 months ago where I told 2 of the companies that we work with that we were pulling our business courses. And they were saying, but they're off the shelf. We want to keep ordering. I said, yeah, but they haven't got AI in them. How can we have credibility and be helping people understand about the business world if we're not even talking about AI? So I pulled them, stopped them. And in that time, we've developed 5 new courses around AI. We're very fortunate to be one of the Institute of Enterprise and Entrepreneurs at the moment, only authorized to actually create and deliver AI courses. And we're in talk with some training providers around how we can actually use some of our knowledge around developing AI courses. And if you think back to that point I mentioned earlier on about doing the audits that we're funded by with the Growth Hub, I had to learn, I had to watch the YouTube videos, which is what all the youngsters use today. I went on Discord. Now all the youngsters now are going to go, whoa, get the old fella, he's on Discord. Because I understood and I knew that I needed to use it, try it. So anyone out there that's not doing it at the moment, you're not using AI tools, just start playing with it and then start to see and understand how it works, because that then is going to give you that opportunity then, I think, to adapt with what's going on.
100%. What a great way
did I answer your question, Chris?
More than absolutely.
I think I forgot the question.
No, you got there. Absolutely. You got to remember as well with the AI, it is the worst AI we're ever going to get. A little bit like when you started on the internet, you might have been able to see a static image of something or whatever it may be, compared to your high-res videos and everything else that's on there now. You think about how that's going to evolve over the next, forget 5 years or 10 years, the next 6 months, it's going to be in a completely different place, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the problems we've had is we've had to think about how we're creating our AI courses, because how do we keep them evergreen? You know, I mean, this is, it's slightly sad, but it's also ironic, is that we still have to print courses to go into prison because people in prison, you know, they can't access the internet for obvious reasons, but they're not all digitized either. So we're talking about AI in a printed format, which is a challenge in itself. But we've got to write these courses, and they need to still be relevant in 2 years. And so it is about how do we get our head around this fact that the evolution is so rapid. I mean, I heard someone actually compare AI when you're talking to the generative AI and the LLMs. They talk about comparing it to IQ levels. And I remember someone saying that at the moment, if you're talking to ChatGPT or you're talking to Gemini, you may be on an Elon Musk or an Einstein level, which is around the 150, 155 IQ level. So who wouldn't want someone with an IQ level of 155 helping them with their tasks? And then, you know, it won't be long before we go to the next level up, which the music fans out there are going to love to hear this one. Who was it that created that dress made out of red meat?
Oh, Lady Gaga. Yeah.
Lady Gaga, IQ level 166 off the scale. Go Lady Gaga, which probably makes you think about, that was a very clever move, putting on the creating the dress of red meat, and I think there was a matching handbag which was a steak of some sort. So obviously a very intelligent move, but I think it's very easy to forget that if we align that Moore's law of doubling in 7 months, and now we think about IQ levels where they are now, then I mean, it's coming. It's coming.
It's exciting times, isn't it? I think we're living through the most disruptive. I think AI is going to be even more disruptive than the internet was, actually, in terms of the widespread adoption of the internet. And what fascinates me about that, and again, this is a topic for another time because we could almost open up a whole new discussion thread here. Can you imagine us three in a pub at the end of the bar, right? I mean, we would be those three old gits they throw out at 11, whatever time pubs close these days. I don't know. I've not been in one for a long time. But I think we do live in the most exciting times in all of human history, really, because I think people need to ask the fundamental questions around what AI means for their actual core business models, and not see AI as how do I create content or just do something faster that I'm already doing, because maybe that thing you're already doing won't even exist soon, at least in the way that it's done now. And then you gave the example of publishing earlier, Richard, and I mean, I now self-publish books using AI as a research assistant, and it's accelerated my ability to write a book exponentially. I mean, I used my older books that were done the old-fashioned way through a publisher with a commissioning editor. That was like an 18-month journey and a very challenging one. Now I've got like an AI research assistant who's like a superpower who can find me everything I need to find super quick and help augment my thinking as well. You know, I think we're heading into trouble if we ever franchise out our thinking, but that's just a personal subjective opinion. But yeah, I think it's exciting times, and I think we're lucky to be living in these times. I think, really, you know, I'm fascinated to see how this journey progresses. And just to, by way of wrapping up, though, 1,000 thank yous from all of us at Sea Learning, Chris, myself on this call today. Huge thank you to Richard Wood, the chief executive of a fabulous organization called Rocketeer Group. Richard is doing some amazing work, as you probably picked up on from this conversation. And if you want to seek out Richard, you can either track him down very easily online. He's a well-known chap. But equally, if you want to contact me or anybody else at the Sea Learning team, we can direct you straight to Richard very, very quickly. If you're interested in AI courses or in accelerating your growth or mentorship or coaching support, Richard's got stellar skills he brings to everything he does, as well as immense passion and enthusiasm. I was kindly invited by Richard to a workshop he was running one late Friday evening a few months back, and I was just blown away by the energy that Richard brings into a room at 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. Absolutely inspirational stuff. So keep up the good work, Richard. It's been an absolute privilege to have this conversation, and let's perhaps record another one soon on one of these topics that we could dig into in more detail. But I need to go and peel a banana now anyway, so I'm going to have a monkey mindset tonight. Caroline's going to come home and she's going to be like, what are you doing? Because I'll be in the kitchen studying a banana, you know. Anyway, thanks for the conversation, and yeah, it's been great. Speak soon.
Thank you.